Sonic the Hedgehog 2 versus Morbius is a phrase I never thought would come out of my mouth, but here I am making a video with that exact title. You may have noticed that these two films released in the exact same weekend. If I were to ask you which film is performing better, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 or Morbius, what would you say? Bearing in mind that Morbius is made by a studio which is known for having countless successful films over the past many years. However, Sonic is a franchise that I can fairly confidently say has just been decreasing in popularity since it peaked quite a while ago. So if your answer was Morbius, you'd be wrong. Compared to Sonic, Morbius has lost in pretty much all aspects, such as opening weekend revenue, overall box office, critic reviews, and fan reviews. They actually come quite close in the box office, which I was quite surprised by, because the only other person I know who's seen Morbius is the person I saw it with. Once you get past the wacky, cheesy, expectedly childish humour of Sonic 2, there's actually really nothing bad to say about it. Like, I genuinely can't think of much else to criticize. Obviously it's not a perfect film, otherwise I'd be absolutely blown away. There really isn't much to say other than just praise. In Sonic 2, the storyline and just general storytelling and the pacing, it's really easy to follow, and it's so enjoyable. It is a very fun film. I genuinely couldn't guess what was going to happen in the film. That might just be because I'm not a huge Sonic fan. I never really have been. I am going to spoil a bit of the film right now, so if you care about what happens in the film, then maybe just skip this part. It was pretty obvious that Sonic, Knuckles and Tails were gonna team up to take down Dr. Robotnik, but I definitely didn't guess that Robotnik actually gained full control of the Master Emerald, and I certainly didn't guess that Sonic would take the control from him and have power over the 7 Chaos Emeralds and literally turn Super Saiyan. Like, I knew he could do that. I'm not completely living under a rock when it comes to the Sonic lore. But I wasn't expecting it to happen in this film. And I also guessed that the post-credit scene would be Shadow. It just made the most sense. This does mean that we'll be getting a third film, probably. I can't imagine that it'll be any more than a trilogy. I think a fourth film would probably ruin it. But with the way that the film industry is at the moment, everyone's trying to do a multiverse, so I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw Super Mario Bros. Sonic the Hedgehog crossover film, because there is a Super Mario film coming out at some point. I don't know if there is a release date yet, but it's the one with Chris Pratt, the one everyone screamed about when they released the cast. So remember this video if we ever do get a Sonic and Mario film, because I think that's a genuine possibility. The story in Morbius is so mundane and predictable and just so forgettable that it pains me to think about it. It's basically just two vampire dudes who don't like each other. Wait, listen to this. Would you rather watch a film about an ultra-fast blue hedgehog who teams up with a flying red fox, a badass red echidna, to take down a crazy robot-obsessed scientist who wields the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds? Or would you rather watch a film about two dudes who are childhood friends and then they become vampires and they want to kill each other because one of them has slightly less evil intentions than the other? Because I picked the first film, without a doubt. The post-credit scene in Morbius sucks just as much as the rest of the film. I'm about to spoil this one for you guys as well. I know there's so many Morbius fans out there who just haven't seen the film yet and are definitely going to be watching this video first. So just a little spoiler warning there for you. But basically, the Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming shows up. He arrives out of the multiverse, which is as a result of the ending of Spider-Man No Way Home. If you didn't know, Morbius is separate from the MCU, which is why the Vulture's coming through the multiverse, obviously. This post-credit scene, to me, is just a desperate attempt to gain interest from MCU fans, as well as a desperate attempt to set up a sequel, which could very possibly happen since the film hasn't done terribly in the box office, and also Sony and Marvel just have an unlimited supply of money that they can do whatever they want with. So I guess I'll be making another video when we get Morbius 2, more BS. Another reason I think this post-credit scene felt forced is because it just came out of nowhere. The rest of the film had absolutely nothing to do with it. It just made the rest of the film feel like a complete throwaway just so they could include this post-credit scene. And so they could include like, ooh, it's a cool multiverse thing. Hey, this happens in Spider-Man. It's also happening in our film. You should come and see that. But in particular, what was really bad about this scene was the lines that they had Michael Keaton say. It felt so unnatural. It was very robotic. I don't know who wrote those lines, but I think anyone else could have done a better job. It was another desperate attempt from them, just this time it was so they could shoehorn a line about Spider-Man in there. So back to Sonic 2. The CGI in this film is just extremely good. I was blown away by it. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. I have a slight confession. I never actually saw the first one. Well, I started to watch it on Netflix and then I fell asleep, which wasn't anything to do with how boring the film was. I was just tired. And the fact that I still enjoyed the sequel without ever seeing the first one, I think that says something about how good it is. Yeah, I was very impressed by the CGI. They've come a long way since that first trailer for the first film. As many of you will remember, when they released the trailer for the first film, Sonic's design was completely different. He looked horrific. He looked like a human wearing a fursuit, and it was just very, very uncomfortable. And I don't know how they thought it was a good idea to release a trailer with him looking like that. But luckily the fans bullied the studio into completely changing the design of Sonic. And it was for the best, because if they'd stuck with that original design, there's no way they would have got a sequel. No way in hell. Anyway, I'm getting slightly sidetracked there. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. But the reason why I think the CGI in this film is really good is because they changed the way that studios usually use CGI, which is usually to try and convince the audience that something is real. So they try to make it as realistic as possible, and it often just comes off as really unnatural. It's also often used to replace physical effects and also to replace 2D animation, which very often just does not work very well. But when it's used as its own art style rather than replacing something else, like really beautiful, it just unlocks so much more potential, which is where I think Morbius went wrong. The CGI in Morbius just is so unconvincing the whole way through, and you can tell they're trying to... Other times the CGI is just downright lazy. For example, during like the main action scenes when the two vampire guys are fighting each other, they both have like a black aura kind of like misting off of them, which blurs out the majority of their body, which I think is just a lazy tactic, so they didn't have to animate the movements of their bodies when they were fighting. Another reason why I think Sonic 2 has done so well is because they have a clear defined target audience. And what I mean by that is it's very clearly aimed at children and young nostalgia seeking adults. Although I'm not a Sonic fan, I think I still fit into that category, the nostalgic adults, because when I was like 9 I played a lot of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games on my DSi. But when I look at Morbius, I really can't tell who the target audience is. The obvious answer would be comic book fans. Even they don't seem to like it. Disclaimer, I have not talked to every comic book fan there is. Another group of people that comes to mind is MCU fans, like myself. I don't actually read comics. I will admit that I didn't know who Morbius was before the film was announced. I think that's the same case for a lot of MCU fans, which is why I think the target audience isn't MCU fans. Many of them don't know who Morbius is. Like, they really give us nothing. There's no force bringing us to see this film. The only reason I went to see it is because people were shitting on it on Twitter and I had to see it for myself. But yeah, this is mainly my opinion. You're allowed to like Morbius, but I think there's a reason it's only 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. See ya.